Hello and welcome to How I Shot This with APA. And today we're featuring Nader Khouri. He's a recognized food and lifestyle photographer and director, and he started out as a photojournalist and moved into food and lifestyle and still tries to add that influence from those days to his work. His clients include Whole Foods, Peet's Coffee, Buchanan Scotch Whiskey, APA, and also he's on APA's diversity committee, and he's a former board member of APA SF. And today he's going to be talking to us about working with hard shadows and getting graphic elements in his lighting.
In the 2000s, I was working as a photojournalist and studied it in school. And one of my biggest inspirations was Alex Webb, a Magnum photographer, and a lot of the shadows that you saw in his work. He was a street photographer, but is working obviously with a lot of ambient natural light, and a lot of his work is very graphic with shadows. I just really kind of was drawn to that because we always are taught and conditioned to you always have to have lighting. The eyes have to be lit up, you can't have the eyes under shadow. But how about thinking about look at the opposite, where that the hard shadows can actually be very appealing. And the one shot that I'd like to talk about is basically one cocktail that's got this almost triangular shadow in the background. That to me is just it was such a fun kind of shadow that I could create, that I wouldn't necessarily do that on most of my commercial shoots. I'd been developing that a lot. I just, whenever I'm on set, I think about oh, wouldn't it be cool to do that? And it was over time that I would just flag light, use scrims and flags. It's kind of a process of kind of working with whatever is the props are that are on set to make the shadow work within that environment. I haven't actually had any commercial clients say, hey, we want you to do that kind of lighting. I mean, I wish they would. But what it comes down to is we as commercial photographers, we do work for others, but we still have to, from time to time, get something out of it for our own selves as well. For me, I just still also, in a lot of shots, I'll just add a little bit of a hint of a shadow in the corner just to kind of break up the kind of composition of that particular shot. I'm able to do that a lot with just some commercial clients. Adding a harder shadow can kind of, make it feel like the door just opened or something. It can just be as simple as putting some kind of foam core or something in the way, or flag on a C-stand. It takes a little bit of practice, but it's not hard to do, and it makes it actually feel a little bit more real.
What would you need to create something that looks like the sun's really hitting it?
There are two images. I wonder if people could tell which ones are actually natural light. There is the one of the pears, that's actually natural light. And then there's the one of the cocktail in the window. The rest are shot in studio, and they're pretty much all bare bulb. Sometimes I'll add a very, very thin, maybe it's a 3/4 stop scrim to some, just to kind of make it not so harsh.
And then it looks like you might be using leaves or in some cases flags to create the shadow.
That was a lot of very careful moving the leaves around for probably about 40 frames, before we kind of got it in the right place that we liked it. So yeah, like I said, it's time consuming, and I don't know how many shots a day I can get, but it's not a huge shot count day.
It's a really cool way of lighting that I know I certainly don't usually think of, and so it's really interesting to see that you're doing this.
Especially with people, you got to be careful with having barely any diffusion, because it can really bring out all the imperfections. Not that those are a bad thing, but it can really almost way too much accentuate it. So it's just really adjusting the light. Just keep testing it to see like, okay, does that look just way too, on whether it's the person's face or the food. One thing also to be aware of is when you're getting these hard shadows is having the light as far away from the subject as possible. If you can see in the BTS shot, the C stand is pretty much almost maxed out, and that helps create the harder shadow. The further away from the subject, the harder the shadow is.
That was how I shot this with Nader Khouri.
Thank you so much, Eli. That was fun.